If you've been trying to conceive and wanting to have a baby, then in this episode we are going to share about Ayurvedic tips on how to become super fertile and have a super baby. Hi, this is Zia and this is
Kamana, and welcome to Holistic Nomads TV,
where ancient wisdom and modern science can help you to have more clarity and energy in your life. So super baby, Kimi.
super babies. Yeah. So when it comes to promoting fertility and having a child, the first thing I want to talk about is just the responsibility of having a child. It's not just about trying to make sure that the child is alive and fairly healthy, but it's about bringing a being into this world and really thinking about what is the role for creation. And their role is a generalization of all humans is to be able to do dharma, righteous action towards our body, towards another, and towards the world. So how can we set up the circumstances where this being has maximum potential to do dharma? And that involves a lot of things. It involves a lot during the parenting process and raising the child. Not what we'll go into now. We'll talk about some key parenting things in another episode. But in this one, we're looking at how can we prepare and make this baby and you as strong as possible so that when they're born they have maximum capacity to do lots of things with their life.
Yeah, so a little bit background about this episode. Basically, many friends of mine, Indonesian, wanting to have a baby, but they find it difficult to conceive, basically. And then in Asian culture, it's such a, I don't know, high value thing for you to have a baby, especially as soon as you get married. And then it's such a typical question, even for me, like every time I go back to my hometown and then meet my family, they'll be like, so when will you have a baby? And we got married already like 4 years now. So it's probably for some people, it's become like a, what do you call it? Pressure to have a baby as well in these kind of circumstances. So those Indonesian who has been asking me, can Ayurveda help to be fertile, conceive? The answer is yes. So today's episode is going to go through that. So there are 3 big topics, is that correct?
Yeah, I've narrowed it into 3 main areas to help with fertility.
3 main areas. And then the first one is detoxification. So why is it important for the parents to detoxify?
Because the rate of fertility is dropping all around the world. And these first 2 points that we'll go into, detoxification and secret, is that they are really affecting fertility. When we have a higher toxic level in our body says, no, reproduction of a baby is the lowest priority. Ayurveda has an order system towards the tissues inside the body, and it first goes fluids, then blood, then muscle, then fat, then bones, then maja, the nervous system, and then the 7th tissue is shukra, the reproductive essences of the body. And it prioritizes that order. So if there is toxins that start to develop inside the fluids or the blood, then it says, oh, I'm going to put less energy in towards the reproductive essence, the reproductive tissues. So we really need to look at this cascade, and we'll go through that when we come to point number 2. But first we'll be looking at detoxification. How can we make sure that we don't have so much toxins in the body that we're transferring those toxins onto our child? And one of the first things we look at is heavy metals, because heavy metals easily transfer towards the child. So particularly mercury and a lot of these cadmium, heavy metals that are becoming more and more dominant in our atmosphere due to pollution in the ocean, due to them coming back through pesticides and so many other factors. So we really need to try and reduce our heavy metal exposure through organic foods in the preparation for pregnancy, if that's possible, and to detoxify and enable the body to move more of those heavy metals out of the system. Now, I have a personal favorite for detoxification. If we really want to go deeper in detoxification, I think the Ayurvedic system of Panchakarma, it's called, is by far the most deep and effective system of detoxification. No other system of medicine has been doing detoxification for as long as Ayurveda has. So they really understand the pre-procedures to detoxification, how to individualize it, how to do no harm, how to do the post-procedures where you get your functional forces of the body back on again. So it's not just about ripping things out, it's about preparing the body to function great by itself. And we have a whole episode devoted to that. Is it called Panchakarma, or what's
I forgot. We have so many videos, so we'll put the link below.
We'll put the link to that. So you'll see that below. It's on the Ayurvedic process of detoxification and what makes it different to other detoxes. So have a look at that video as well to understand more about detoxification. The next thing we want to look at with detoxification is dosha balance. These doshas, vata, pitta, kapha, disease tendencies, they build up inside our system. And when they build up and become too much, then they can start to create disease in the body. Those doshas can also be transferred towards the child. And in fact, Ayurveda says that the ratio of doshas in our body at the time of conception and for the mother during the pregnancy as well, are the things that influence the doshas that the baby will be. So they influence the birth constitution of the baby and the dominant imbalances. So let's say if there's more vata, more nervous system imbalances, tendency to constipation, dry skin, then we're passing on that vata disease tendency towards the child if we're conceiving and carrying the baby when that is higher in the body. So detoxification of the doshas can also happen a lot in Panchakarma, yet it can also happen through just living a nice balanced life and doing some lifestyle things. It depends on how deep-seated the doshas are, how stuck they are inside your system. And the next area that we look at is very particular for the women, is to detoxify the uterus and the fallopian tubes, to make sure that the areas where the baby will be living and getting its nourishment from are in a really good potential and no excessive toxins are built up in that area. So there's all sorts of douches that they could use, oil type lubricants that would be used to clean out the vaginal canal and ensure a really strong area there. The reason they use these oil type douches, oil type internal washers, is because oil tends to suck things into it. So it enables to draw the toxins into the oil and then pull them out when the oil naturally evacuates.
Yeah, I need to share a little bit because Kimana's sister, she did your Vitality and Ayurvedic Detox Retreat, I forgot, I think 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And then before that, she actually have some challenge in her health. I don't know exactly, but maybe you can share. But after that, basically, she's conceived, and then she had one of the most beautiful, kindest, just loving baby.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
What we did for her was a very individualized program. So we first have gone through a Panchakarma, or a detoxification procedure, and then we've gone through a really amazing nourishment procedure, which comes to our second point, which is nourishment. So first we detoxify, and then number two, we nourish, we build up the body. And this should happen for both the man and the woman. His contribution is also really important. So both should detoxify first, and then they should nourish. They should build up their system so they can give maximum nutrition, incredibly vital sperm, an incredibly vital egg, and good nourishment and fluids to the child. And I've put nourishment into a few different areas here. So the first one for Ayurveda is known as Russa. Russa translates as your fluids. It's the first tissue that I was talking about before out of the 7 tissues of the body. So the body prioritizes Russa, and we need to build that first. Fluids, circulation, which relates to plasma and the lymphatic system to a large degree. And if the fluids are not working really effectively, we cannot feed a baby properly. We cannot get the nourishment to the reproductive areas. We can't get the egg to move effectively through the fluids of the body. We're not going to be able to produce good breast milk when we need to feed the baby. This all relates to the health of Russa. And one of the most important things for the health of Russa is exercise. So making sure that you have a daily exercise practice before you're having the baby. Because my grandfather used to say to my mother that having a baby is like preparing for a boxing fight. Because he was a boxer, he was a world champion boxer. Now, in order to prepare for the fight, you have to work out, you have to get prepared, you've got to get yourself in the right zone, because there's going to be demands, there's going to be physical demands to your cardiovascular system, pain thresholds that you'll have to move for. I don't think it's quite like preparing for a boxing fight, that's his analogy, but it is something you need to prepare your body for. Don't just go, oh yeah, exercise doesn't matter. Exercise is super important to have a great baby, and especially to keep this Russa, this fluids working wonderfully.
Would you say that that exercise also relates to somehow, when women, after they have babies, then they don't lose their weight, they just, stay in that.
They're able to stay in a good thing. When you say lose their weight, you're saying
people
gain excess.
Gain and then they don't go back to the normal. Is that also
yeah.
exercising before, during the pregnancy can help for you to like?
Absolutely, because the more solid muscle mass that we have in the body, the more effective our metabolism is. So if we can maintain that muscle mass throughout the pregnancy and when the baby comes out, then our metabolism is much more effective and we won't gain as much weight post-pregnancy too.
Okay, great.
The most specific exercise practice, squats. If I'm going to give one, squats are absolutely key because they work with Apana Vata. This is the downward moving intelligence in the body. We did lots of squat exercises for my sister. She had an incredibly quick birth for her first birth, so very smooth birth. Yeah. Squats key. All forms of exercise great, but I would say jogging is probably the least important, and strength and conditioning for the legs is some of the most important.
Exercise.
I
mean, not only good for the baby, but just for you in general, because
great all round.
Yeah, like at the beginning we emphasize that making a baby is not just having another human being, but like making sure that the being that you're going to birth into this world will be a great contribution to humanity. We have so many challenges now. So next one, what will be another factor in this nourishment? In the nourishment, we're still on Russa, the fluids, and I picked one herbal medicine here. I'm trying to pick a herb that could be used by pretty much everyone regardless of the dosha, and the herb I've chosen is Sireva. That's the Sanskrit name. The botanical is Hemidesmus indicus, and this herb is specific for Russa, the fluids of the body. It really helps to nourish liver function. It encourages good fluids across the body. It's a gentle diuretic. It would also help with detoxification. I often use this herb in the Panchakarma programs that I facilitate. People are drinking it a lot. It's much better absorbed and utilized if it's a decoction, which means to boil for more than 20 minutes. So you'd put about a tablespoon of the herb into about 2 liters of water, boil it for at least 20 minutes, and then you'd pour the liquid off, put it into a thermos, sip that throughout the day. That can just be your water. Wonderfully nourishing herb, very useful for many sorts of people. It can be used preparing for the pregnancy, during the pregnancy to nourish the baby, and post-pregnancy it helps to produce really good quality breast milk. So that's our first one for nourishment, is Russa, the fluids of the body. We will put on the caption below the link to buy our recommended organic Sireva herbs. Next one. The next one that we look at is Rakta. This is the second tissue along. Rakta is the blood, and it relates a lot to the nutrients that are inside the blood. And when I come to pregnancy, most specifically, we want to think iron, because iron is really important to nourish and build the baby, and it's very common that women will go into iron deficiency during a pregnancy. They're using so much of it to help build up the baby. So we need to think about that in advance. Let's get the blood up to its really nourished high iron state, so then we're less chance of going into deficiency during the pregnancy. And the thing that I look at here for nourishing your iron, besides a good healthy diet, but I'm looking at a specific herb, is a formula known as Chai One Crush. And it's a combination of many herbs, but its dominant ingredient is a fruit known as amalaki. And this amalaki, like berry type fruit, is really high in vitamin C and specific to nourish the blood. It's a wonderful tonic to nourish the blood, and traditionally it would be cooked into some form of milk. In the modern day age, with the poor quality of cow milk that we have and the way that they're treated, I try to favour away from that. If you can get a local goat's milk or something that's organic and
sustainably grown, then that's more okay. Or sometimes I'll use nut milks as well, and you'll cook about 1 to 3 teaspoons of that chai one crush. It's almost like a herbal jam, herbal jelly, and you cook that into the liquid and drink that at night. Really help to nourish up the blood, the Rakta tissue. Our third area to nourish is Ojas and Shukra. Now, Shukra is the 7th tissue. This is the reproductive essence here. So we've looked at fluids and blood, and yeah, the other ones are important, but when it comes to pregnancy, it's fluid, bloods, and reproductive essence as the most important. And this helps to nourish the sperm and the egg here. And the last thing after that is called Ojas. So we've got 7 tissues, and then we've got this Ojas, which is like the vital life force, this vitality and energy. It's not just that our tissues are functioning well, but that we are like, wow, vibrating, we're full of energy, and that's referred to as Ojas. It's the essence that runs the immune system. And there's lots of things that help to nourish Ojas in the body. Some of our nuts really help to nourish this sperm, egg, shukra, and Ojas. Particularly almonds and walnuts are particularly beneficial there. We've got pomegranate is a wonderful fruit that helps to nourish the reproductive areas. It also helps to cleanse the blood, build Rakta. It's good for the fluid, so it covers a lot of the areas here. A classical Ayurvedic herb that would be used to nourish Shukra and Ojas is called Shatavari, or the botanical Asparagus racemosus. And this is especially if there's a lot of pitta, heat, Shatavari is going to be amazing. Also in Chinese medicine, we could use Chinese wild yam, it's botanical Dioscorea. Great to nourish the reproductive essences, calm the mind, and really focus the body's potential towards nourishment. And if Vata is really affecting, there's a lot of thin dryness that's happening and the nervous system's a bit excited, then ashwagandha could also be used to nourish this reproductive essence and Ojas. And again, ashwagandha would be cooked into some form of milk at night, would be its ideal preparation. Again, in our modern day times, prefer local, organic, less mainstream sources of milk, buffalo, goat, any of those things. And if not, nut milks, those would be my preferences. So that's our 3 areas of nourishment there: fluids, blood, reproductive essences.
Before we go through the 3rd step to make super baby and become super fertile, was there like correlation between detoxification and nourishment before and during and after with postpartum depression? Because it seems like many of my friends share me a story. I'm not pregnant yet, haven't done that. So, and then there's so many stories about going through the depression after you give birth, which is you can probably mention about this Vata releasing, and then how probably this nourishment before and during can help with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Postpartum depression has a lot to do with certain deficiencies inside the body. We would say oxytocin and deficiencies are probably the 2 main factors that influence postpartum depression. And when we look at that, if we have a higher amount of nourishment in the body going through the pregnancy, especially Rakta and Russa, the fluids of the body, then we're far less likely to go into postpartum because we're less likely to go into deficiency. And as we were talking about Ojas, this vital life essence, when Ojas is really high, the body is so hard to go into depression. It's just like, oh, whatever's going on, it's part of life, it's the thing that's happening, it's totally fine. So if we nourish up during pregnancy, we have less chance of deficiency. And as Zia was saying, the giving birth process is a Vata type experience. It's associated with loss, where we've got something inside of us and separating from that being for a period of time. It tends to create a lot of pain, deficiencies. We sometimes have to stay up late. Our nervous system gets very stimulated, so there's a big spike in Vata at that time. And if we don't get a lot of the natural oxytocin that would take place in a gentle natural birth process, then we're less likely to be able to go through that in a very smooth way. So oxytocin is another important part for postpartum depression. High peak of oxytocin when we first experience the baby, and we're talking about natural oxytocin, not the drip that's put into the arm. That doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. You don't get the same sort of euphoria and empathy connection. And mothers that have gone through, let's say, cesarean, they don't have that same oxytocin, empathy connection that takes place, or they've had a drip placed into them, an oxytocin drip, then they don't get the same like, wow, this is my baby, and I want to serve it above anything else. There's this huge connection that takes place there at the beginning. And if that connection is not as strong, then it's much easier to go into postpartum. They feel in that first couple of weeks like, oh, this baby's a bit foreign. I thought I was going to have this incredible bonding, and I'm sort of like, I love it, but I'm not really feeling it. It's like, what happened to my body? And there's a lot that goes on in the mind if we don't get that real oxytocin connection. So 2 major factors for postpartum depression.
Yeah. As an example, your sister, she's going through an amazing, quick, I would say smooth birthing process.
Incredibly smooth, yeah.
Yes, it was water birthing.
Yeah.
And then what's so interesting is that because all of your family is also a body worker and a very like supportive, loving family from Kimana's mother and stepdad. And then during her whole, after the birth, she just feel very supported, like daily body work, like oiling and herbs and really nourishing food.
Yeah.
And imagine like living in the big city, mostly, you're alone, or you're in the hospital and people don't treat you in the same loving way. So I can totally see why, people who live in the city goes through this postpartum depression so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So third one, what is the third one after detoxification and nourishment?
The third one is timing. And in some ways, timing is also the first one. Because if we don't have the right timing, then going through the detoxification and the nourishment might not be necessary at that time in your life. So first we can look at timing in many factors. The first way is in your life. So what's the ideal time to have a baby? We're looking at this 18 to 36 years old is the ideal window to be having a child. It's where we're at our most fertile and the body has more recuperative abilities to deal with it. Now, if you're outside that window, lots of people have children and have happy, healthy children older. We're just looking at the ideal timing for those that are able to prepare and to put it in. And then the next thing in relation to your life is stability. Do we have much stability within our life? Do we have the stable partner that's willing to support us through the process? Do we have a stable career in our job? Do we have the finances that go through with that? Now again, lots of babies can come into the world without stability and we can create a great baby. We're just looking at the ideal factors and what we could set up to create an easier process to really nurture the child and not have the demands of needing to go to work during the pregnancy a lot or needing to go straight back to work once the baby is born. All of these things will help to make it more challenging for focusing on the baby. The next one for timing is the environment. So first it's with us, timing inside ourselves, and then it's like, oh, what's around us as well. In the environment, is it a time of peace around you? Or is it a war-torn country where there's a lot of stuff going on that might be more challenging to have stability there? And the other thing in the environment is the relationship from spring to dry winter, autumn period. The spring is like the fertile time. This is like, yes, seeds are sprouting, rabbits are making love, and everything's going off in this spring fertility, whereas in the autumn, the leaves are dropping, it's drying out. The body is not as fertile in the autumn as it is in the spring. If you live in the tropics, you can just use that principle from moist to driest time of the year. The more moist time of the year, especially if it's just finishing the rainy season, it's going from cool and moist to starting to have more sunshine, that's going to be your more fertile periods of the year, compared to the driest time of the year will be the least fertile periods. And the last factor of timing is in relation to your menstrual cycle. So do you have a regular menstrual cycle, and can you start to use the timing of that cycle to be making love at the ideal time of the month? and really think of that love process. If you want to make super babies, it's not just about having sex. In fact, there's a whole section in Ayurveda about the position that you lay in and the most ideal position to create a really ideal baby. And if the mother is laying on her left side, then that's going to increase pitta inside the child. If she's laying on her right side, that's going to increase vata and kapha inside the child.
Doggy style is a no-no.
If she's in doggy style, that increases all three doshas. Now, there's a lot of details in relation to that, but I think the big takeaway is loving and eye connection. The more of that takes place within the loving encounter of making love, the more soothing and nourishing, and you're creating this nice space for the baby. And your most fertile period is usually, it's best to track this, and you can track ovulation through temperature, the mucus that's coming out of your vagina, and many other things, but as a generalization, it's about 12 days after the bleed until about 16 days after the bleed cycle. That's general for most people, so that's your most fertile window to be looking at. If you can line that up, spring, most fertile window, then it's even more likely to take place. There's some other more complex factors of timing that can be done within the system of Vedic astrology to really pinpoint the days and make it a lot more fertile, yet they're beyond the scope of this and things that you can easily do at home. So this is some good, useful information for people at home.
Yeah, I was about to say that something that you didn't write on that note there is astrology, because it's just a few days ago that Kimana's sister wanted to have a second child, and then she asked Kimana what is a good time to have babies, and then counting 9 months from now, what's the thing in the sky, the planetary position will be a good super baby that will be the one that contribute positively to the world.
Yeah.
So making baby is a huge homework.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot to it. And at the same time, I think there's a degree of trust that needs to go into it as well. We need to put our actions in a direction of, we're going to do something positive for the world. And making babies is a big responsibility, and there's a certain degree of trust. And I really want to put this emphasize for the people that are either already pregnant or already have a child. Trust that whatever happened was right. It was the way it was meant to be, and the divine hand is guiding us through this process. So don't get caught up in what you could have done in the past and what you didn't do, or what you weren't able to do because of your financial resources or access to herbs. Just do what you can and be grateful for that.
Yeah. I want to add lastly is that many people asking me, are you going to have babies? Are you going to make a cute baby? It's going to be great. And I'm like, well, the more I learn about Ayurveda and understand this class is just tiny bit of what it takes to have a great baby, and I want to have a really good, positive, dharmic action baby. So my answer is like no, because there's so many things going on. Not yet, probably. Maybe in the future when I'm ready, when we are ready. I
think most of the time her answer is no, I'm the baby in this relationship, and that's what she said. No. She wants to be the baby still.
But maybe when I'm more mature and I'm like, move on from this baby phase of mine, which probably takes forever. Anyway, anything else you would like to add?
I hope you take this advice, share it with others, apply it in your lives. It can be really useful, and if you really want to go into the detail, it's probably important to see a practitioner and have this individualized. This is educational to give you a good perspective on what you could do.
On the caption below, there's a link for you to submit your name and email if you would like Kimana's guidance on how to make the super baby for you personally. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to see you again next week. Now, theory without practice is wasteful, because hearing leads to forgetting, teaching leads to remembering, and applying leads to mastering. That's why we will encourage you to leave a comment below and share one learning insight from this video. Also, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you will be the first to hear about our future educational videos. And for more resources on health and healing, check out our website holisticnomads.com. There you will find articles, quizzes on Ayurveda, loads of free downloads, and of course, our future events and courses. Thank you so much for watching. We hope it's been beneficial for you. Hope to see you next week. Bye.
Oh, here comes an earthquake. That's Indonesia for you. Yeah. It's gone? Yeah. Okay.
Good.